Hi everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Power of Knowing Forums LinkedIn Live episode 153 today. We are discussing on the topic of unlocking success and how saying no fuels high performers. Without further ado, we have Manisha Gupta, a life performance coach, burnout and stress management uh, speaker who's being going to be part of our discussion today. Without further ado, bringing her on to the podcast event. Hi, Manisha.
Hello, Prem. Hi, Vijay.
And yeah, hi. And we have Vijay Anand, who's the founder of this podcast, back in the session back today. From today, he's going to join us to have the sessions back to back. Over to the session start. We will talk about the topic. The first question that I would like to have, or the first pointer that I would like to have from you, Manisha, can you share a moment where in your early career, when you say no led to a significant breakthrough and professional journey, and what made it difficult, and how did you navigate through this, Manisha?
So, first of all, thank you for inviting me here and talking about this topic saying no. So
Okay.
important in today's world. And as I'm about to share one of the scenario from my life, let me start with sharing about my beginning in my career. So, I come from a non-IT background by education, and
Hmm.
when I stepped into the IT world almost 21 years back, it was a very different and a difficult situation for me, I would say. So, the learning curve was very steep. There were a lot of things to navigate through. One was getting accustomed to the corporate culture, and the other part of it was learning the technology, the know how, the process, and so on. So initial few years, I would say, or initial, just the first initial year was more around navigating myself and getting used to what is happening around me and learning. But what I realized is that if I'm just doing what I'm told to do or what I'm expected to do, I was not seeing a career path being created for myself. And
Hmm.
one thing which became very important for me from the very early stages of my professional life was to know where I'm heading for. And
Okay.
I remember that during the very initial years, having worked on very small projects, multiple roles, learned a lot of things, I was about to join a project which I came to know was not something which would give me the right pathway which I was planning for myself. Now, honestly, that time I didn't know that saying no was an option.
Okay.
So I talked to couple of my seniors in the company, and I realized that that is not something which I should take up because it is not aligning with the kind of growth, the kind of journey that I was looking for myself. So I remember, I mean, when you asked this question, I still remember probably there was a preparation that happened for a few days at how am I going to talk to this person because she was a very senior person in the organization. She was leading that project, and saying no meant going and talking to her and expressing this.
Hmm.
So I prepared myself. I talked to few of the leads around me with whom I had already worked to understand, first of all, what kind of a leader she was, what her personality type was, what would help me have the right conversation. And then I took the first step.
Okay.
So honestly, that may have been the first no in my professional life, which had recently started. It was difficult because I was not in a frame of mind that what would happen if that no would fire back to me. But now, if I look back, I now feel that that was probably one of the best decision because then it made me say yes to something which I really wanted in my career. And from
Hmm.
there, the trajectory of my career took off.
Okay.
Right. So this is what I wanted to share as a beginning, uh, so to say, what knowing saying no meant to me.
Thank you, Manisha, for that briefing about no. When I believe I am a high performer, in your experience, I would like to hear from you how have high performers successfully balanced between taking on opportunities and knowing when to say no for long-term success.
So, Vijay, the word that I hear very, specifically stand out is balance, right? And successfully balance because when we are working, when we are in a corporate setup, or for that matter, in any setup where we are working, there are certain expectations from our role, and there are certain expectations that we need to fulfill, right? But what I have seen time and again, one of the very common traits which I have seen in high professionals is their unwavering focus on their vision and goal. Lot of clarity around where they want to go, where they want to be, and not only as individuals, but as a team, as an organization, and to be there to reach there, how they would want to prioritize things, and also to align this with their values, with their core values, with the values of the organization that they work for. And this alignment becomes very, very crucial, and it looks to be like it's something which can never be compromised. So, as you're asking, as you ask this question, and as I'm reflecting on some of the organizations that I've worked for, it reminds me of one of my early days, again, when I was working as a manager. There was a managing director with whom we were working, and his vision was to expand the unit that we were part of and just take it to the next level, which really meant like literally taking it tenfold, expanding it tenfold. And one thing which I have clearly observed and experienced in my interactions and in the kind of work that we would do together was that he was very clear about that what we need to focus on, right? What expertise we want to build, what value we would want to add as a team, and what kind of work we would want to do to stand out and to expand the unit in that particular area.
Hmm.
And what it meant was saying no to projects, saying no to opportunities that may sound lucrative in terms of billing, in terms of revenue at times, but it was not in line with the vision that he had and also the vision of his leadership. And hence, overall, being aligned to that vision is something that will help you successfully balance while also looking at what would help you grow and sustain, right? Which means that it's not like you're just saying no, 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 but it is also about saying no to things which are not aligned, but saying yes to where you would want to be. So I would want to summarize it as that it's also about, cutting the noise, not feeling distracted, and just focusing on what you would seem as important for you.
So the point that you are trying to drive is more to look at how uh, we can cut out things that are not very important and not aligning to our business goals, and because of which having them would derail what we have planned. Is
Hmm.
that what we are looking at, Manisha?
Absolutely, because uh, saying no does not mean that inaction,
Okay.
right? Saying no means setting your priorities right. Setting no also means getting that clarity of where you would want to be and
Hmm.
focusing on your vision, your big picture, so that you are able to drive towards that with focus.
Great. So, as a leader, how do you create a culture where saying no is seen as a strength, okay, rather than a weakness? Can you
Mm.
give some examples how this has been shaped while you are part of an organization or the current role that you are in with? So, saying, see, when it comes to me itself, but many times I'm not in a position to say no. That's when you say no, I feel I'm offending another person. So that's the point that I'm trying to drive with me being at a C-suite level also, that I cannot say no at times. But how can we put that as a culture is what I wanted to understand from you.
Okay. So, Prem, thank you for asking that question because as a leader, it becomes very important for us to take the ownership of creating that culture.
Hmm.
Right? Now, as we are talking about how important it is to say no, it is also about as a leader taking that responsibility and that ownership to cultivate that culture.
Hmm.
Right? And from my experience, what I've seen, not only me as a leader, but the leaders that I have worked for, one thing which really stands out is that it starts with you, or
Hmm.
it starts with me as a leader, right? If I would want a culture where people are open to say no, where saying no is normalized, it's
Hmm.
not something which is just talked about, it is normalized. Now, that culture will come from leading by example, first of all. How
Okay.
am I standing up as a leader and how am I also saying no to things? It also means that I'm standing, for example, for my team, that my team understands that my leader is also standing for me as a leader and saying no to certain things which, as a team, we may not want to normalize.
Hmm.
It also means creating that open culture or that openness so that people are able to talk about it. Right. So, for
Okay.
example, I am advocating that saying no is so important, and I would want to say no to certain things. But if my team comes and one of the person in my team comes and says no to me, I should not be offended by it.
Yeah.
Right. It also means that I should get into that mindset shift. Right.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I think for any change to start, it has to be deeply ingrained and it has to come from a shift in the mindset. And one of the very important mindset shift for saying no is that saying no is not about rejecting. It's not like you
Yeah.
say something and I say no, no, no. It's not about rejecting. It is about making the right choice. Probably this choice is not the right choice for me or for my team or for the organization, right? So, cultivating that mindset through openness, through leading by example, through open communication, through transparency, through even actively listening, through being empathetic to what people are saying, will help us build that culture. And when we say empathetic, it also means that if, for example, I'm saying no to something, am I giving some options? Am I giving some alternatives? Am I making sure that I also, as a leader, come up as a person who is ready to support in my capacity, right? So I would say these are small steps, and I've seen like some of the leaders that I've worked with. I myself, when I was part of corporate, the way we used to work is to promote that openness in the organization, to promote that openness in the team, so that people are motivated and encouraged to imbibe that culture, right?
Okay.
So
So yeah, that's very important. I think that's where we should look at. Also, your point is valid in terms of saying what is more important than what is to be done as not saying no. We come and align somewhere properly. That's where I think the point that is driving on the conversation. On the other point, how does human centric approach make decision making, including the act of saying no? See, driving innovation and better outcomes in today's world is very fast and very fast changing today. Right? Saying no is something kind of saying no to an opportunity. First point. The second is if that you said that on the second pointer that I asked, it could be lucrative, right? And when you compare, the numbers may go different. But if it is not matching the business line that you are going and you take it, how does that kind of a pointer look at, and what is your view on it, Manisha?
So, if I get your question right, Prem, we are talking about that will a no mean a lost opportunity,
Yeah, one
right?
point, yes.
Right. Now,
This again connects to a person not getting offended also, right? So that's where when you talk about it, is more of human centric. Now it is, how do I know you, you know me, we've been customers, but I'm giving you a project which does not align to your business line. So how this human centric decision making includes in saying no, that's the question that I'm trying to drive
hmm,
with.
right. So, if I would want to oversimplify it, right, at the end of the day, it is about humans, right? What I feel that in in any setup
Hmm.
where we are operating from, it sort of boils down to humans,
Yeah.
because in a way, eventually, what we are doing will be serving humans. All the processes, the tools, everything will be used by humans. Even if we are talking about automation and AI, everything will eventually be for the benefit of humans, right? Now, one of the very important theme to understand is having a common platform for discussion, right? When we say no, a no should not just express my side of the emotions. So, if we talk in terms of human centric approach, right, it is not only about my side of the emotions, it is about coming to a common platform where I am also listening to your side of the emotions, that where you could be coming from, and then being able to express that how I see it as what is my perspective, how does, for example, my strategy would look like. And somewhere, if we are doing business, if we are having this kind of conversation, somewhere there will be a common goal,
Hmm.
right? It will mostly not happen that we are having a conversation and there will not be a common goal to it. So, that common goal could be the pivotal point. It could be the common foundation from where we can start with that conversation and then take it from there, that what is important to say yes to and what is important to say no to,
Okay.
right? So coming up with that open mindset, I think, will enable those kind of conversations without hurting the relationship between individuals and teams.
Okay. With the unprecedentable business today on the landscape, how do you evaluate when it is right to say no and to project an initiative to prevent necessary risks?
Right. Such an important question, right? We are talking about like saying no. We are emphasizing on what is the importance of saying no and how, why we should say no and so on.
Hmm.
But if we come to the root of it, why are we saying no? Not why are we not saying no,
Yeah.
right? One of the one of the reasons could be that we are driven by uncomfort, right? So maybe culturally we are not taught how to say no. It may come as a form of disrespect. It may come show up as a form of disobedience and so on, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Or it can also come from our very nature as human beings, that to be in conflict with something will mean some level of discomfort. It may also come from fear, and in select in extreme cases, it may also mean that I may feel intimidated by the very thought of saying no, because it may have some repercussions. It may impact my career, my life, my growth, and so on and so forth, right? So, if we come to that, what could be the root of it? We would be able to look at this in a very contextual way, in a very real way. That first of
Hmm.
all, This is coming from fear. From fear, if I say no, I might be fearful of what if I lose this opportunity? The way the industry is growing, if I say no to a project, I may not be able to get the next project on a similar technology in a similar location with a similar kind of leadership and so on. But I have a question that if we are saying yes when we would want to say no, it would also mean that we are not going to solve our fear or our insecurities. We would still be living with them.
Hmm.
So we have to hit at that what is this fear coming from? It could be coming from a an analysis of how the, say for example, the risk and the reward would look to us. So if we take a step back and if we actually remember that saying no is not a reflex, it is not a reflex to a situation. It is not like I don't want to do this.
Hmm.
It has to come from a well thought through process. It has to be evaluated, it has to be assessed. That if you are saying no to a project, it means that you have considered various factors. Is this project aligning with your strategic goal? You know, do you have the right resources to support that project, or you don't have it? What would be your ROI? What would be your risk reward ratio, and so on? Right now, if it doesn't align with your objectives, then it is better to plan for something or go ahead with something which aligns with your objectives and fulfills than than going ahead with something which is more fueled by fear and insecurities. Because any which ways, a saying yes to something will not help. It needs to be worked on. And in fact, to add to that, Prem, right, as a leader, as a as part of the leadership, being in organization or now working as a coach and helping leaders grow and evolve and work uh, as high performers and excel in their life and career, this is one thing which is very clearly showing up is that lot of this is coming from our own inner fears and insecurities rather than about what is the real problem on the outside world. So that needs to be looked at from that space.
Let me ask you a question,
Yes.
Manisha. See, there are a lot of trends in the industry, right? In your opinion, what are the key trends shaping the future of leadership and performance management today? How does saying no fit into these evolving trends? Because we always look for a go-getter as a leader, right? So, what is your opinion on this?
Now, when you say what are the trends, let me first talk a little about that, Vijay. In fact, looking at the industry right now, looking at the way things are being prioritized, I see two kinds of trends emerging, right? Very, and in a way, this looks conflicting to me. One is a very human centric approach where there's lot of talk, there are a lot of initiatives by the organization around mental well-being, employee well-being, creating that space for people where they are in the right frame of mind to be more productive, which means creating the space for people to be able to say no, right? So this is what is being actually nurtured in the organization. This is one trend which is very strongly showing up. But there's another trend if you look at the real numbers and the way industries are moving. There's a lot of agility. There is a lot of expectations, right? We're looking at full stack developers. Like it's like a baby is born and the baby should know everything, right? It's like people should know the art and science of what they're working on and they should be exceptional at it because that is the demand of the market and people are working towards it because industry is ever changing. So what I see is that there are conflicting and there are contrasting needs. Now, how will saying no fit into it? Again, strategically, when we are focused on something, if we know that where our focus needs to be, where our energy needs to go, I think it is going to help us make the right choices. So while we may have that FOMO, fear of missing out, that if I say no to this opportunity, or if I say no to this client, or if I'm saying no to this kind of growth, I may have that FOMO. What will happen? But when we have thought through it and when we are so focused on what we want to create, I think this can be sorted out very easily.
I think the point that you are taking is more of looking at how the leadership and management dilemma can be looked at when it comes it, right? So now looking at that, how do you think a balance can be made between empathetic and decisiveness of as a leader, particularly when it comes to no to an ideas, people, and opportunities? Most of them comes where is the ideas and people do matter. So how do you build that empathy versus decisiveness as a leader?
Right. So now when you're talking about, like, how do we build that empathy, right? It's all, again, I would want to come back to this, that it is not only about me saying no to something.
Hmm.
It's also about listening,
Yeah.
right? So it is about listening to what other people would want a yes on. Because if
Hmm.
you see, when we are working on one side, everyone will want a yes from you,
Yeah.
right? And on the other side, as a leader, right, you will also have to make the right decisions.
True.
So if there are 10 people in my team, or, you know, 1,000 people in my team, the expectation of a yes from a leader are too high.
Yeah.
But as a leader, I may have to take some tough decisions.
Hmm.
But does that mean that taking tough decisions will mean that I'm going to be losing that trait of being an empathetic leader? I would say no. Being still available to listen and being available to help your team members, your organization evolve and empower, that how can hearing a no would mean to them, and what are the alternatives they will come up with, or
Hmm.
what are the alternatives as a leader you can provide. That is going to help balance out things, because in a professional world we cannot be just focusing on one side of the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if I talk about some of the common pitfalls in the decision making, right? What are the common pitfalls you've seen the leaders and high performers face when they fail to say no at the right time? How
So,
can this be avoided?
right. So, uh, Vijay, why we are, emphasizing so much on saying no, right, is a very important question to ask to start with, right? So, if I see myself as a leader, what is what does it need for me to say no? It means that there is something which is more important, or which needs to be taken care of, and hence I need to say no, right? So if I fail to say no, it could lead to, one is probably the lack of focus. Very important thing. There are times when I have seen that as a leader, if the person is not able to say no, they have lost focus. Things have diluted, their vision have diluted, their purpose is diluted. It may also impact the value that they are providing, that is diluted. So when we are losing that focus, and especially now when we are looking at where technology, humans, resources, the space that we are working in, where the complexity that we have in the nature of the work that is being done, it is so important that we don't lose that focus. Now, that's one part of it. That's more of like it may be impacting the decision making. It may be impacting the revenue that we are generating for the organization, the growth that we are looking for the organization, the vision that we have for the organization, and where we are actually heading towards. It could be as uh, it can impact these so important areas. So that's one thing that if I, as a leader, don't respect, if I don't focus on saying no, I would be losing my focus. I may be all over the place. The other way of looking at it is also, again, an example. I remember that we had a manager in the organization I was part of, and he was a very yes person. Where whenever we would go to him, or I've seen a lot of, whenever people would talk to him, a very supportive, a very, genuine person, but a very yes person. Never seen him say no. But there is a limit to what people can do, right? And what came up is that being a yes person, one thing is that there were a lot of things he would say yes to which he couldn't fulfill. And
Hmm.
that led to strained relationships or people not trusting him, his team, the value that he could offer, and so on. So, if we are overcommitting, if we are not saying no, we are actually also depleting the trust, because if we falter, people will not continue to believe us. So, this is second thing, which is more around the interpersonal relationships and more of even professional relationships that may be put at stake. And then finally, I feel more at a personal level, if you're not able to, draw those boundaries, if you're not able to put it in even in your head that this is yes and this is no, you're going to just drain yourself. And it becomes stressful, it will lead to anxiety, it will lead to burnout, and it will lead to loss of productivity.
Hmm.
So it's like it's a very, I would say, a very fine edged sword, where if you are not going this way and you're falling on the other side in any which ways, you're not being productive and you're not being focused, where you will not be able to meet your goals the way you would want to.
So the pointer that you are informing or telling us, is that today you say yes, and there could be a overwhelming request that can come into you, and that may cause a pointer where you cannot fulfill everything because you said yes, and because of that yes, you're obligated to say or do things that are beyond your say boundaries, maybe at times beyond your capacity. That could be also a possibility, saying that accepting a challenge beyond the work that you can do will also strain things, and it can give a wrong notation is what you're trying to say, right? Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So coming on to that piece of this one, as many listeners struggle to talk too much, could you share a practical strategy how they can get to say comfortable saying no and while still maintaining a strong relationship at work? See, most of the people are afraid to say no. That's the first pointer, is what I feel. So, your take on it?
Right. So, very true, Brain, that people are afraid to say no, culturally also, and also because of the repercussions. So, probably we are not used to saying no, and
Hmm.
also we are not preparing or prepared to say no,
Yeah.
right? Now, if you If you talk about why people are struggling, right? Because there's something which is ingrained in them that if they say no, this will happen. Because there are many times we create our own stories. What if I
Hmm.
say no, this person will feel bad, this person will feel I'm not capable. In fact, that's also in the world that we live in, the highly competitive world that we live in, saying no can also be considered as a question on our capabilities that, oh, why is this person not able to do this? Right? And this is not only limited to a professional space, but even in personal spaces, saying no would mean that, I'm a careless person, I'm a careless parent, I'm a careless friend or a son or a daughter. Now, these things may come and hit us very hard,
Hmm.
right? But if we are able to understand that what is the mindset that we would want to inculcate, right? Because I just want to reiterate that the mindset of saying no is not about rejecting something. That no, I don't want to do this. I'm not capable of this, or this is not what I want to help with. Saying no is about developing that mindset that what is important, what are the choices that I need to make to prioritize myself, my life, my family, my team, my organization, or the value that I would want to add as a leader, and so on and so forth, right? So it needs lot of clarity in the head around what is my strategy, what is my vision, plus how I am able to communicate that. Because if it is in my head and I'm having the big picture, but if I'm not able to communicate, other side will never know that
Hmm.
why am I saying no and to this, and what would I want to say yes to,
So,
right? So open communication is so important. Prioritizing yourself is so important. And then actually, sometimes what I want to add one more thing. Sometimes we feel that so saying no would be difficult,
yeah.
but when we actually go and do it, it may not be that difficult as it may.
No, I was going through one of the books that say what you see is not what you get at times, and uh, what you feel, the fear, which is Louis Hay's book, which talks about saying that feel the fear and do it anyway. So that's the one thing that it says, and fear in that book turns out to be saying that false evidence appearing real, because you think something is wrong but actually it is not, but when you ask it, it gets done like that. So I think that's the point that you're trying to drive, is what I take. Over to you, Vijay, to
Yeah. Uh, I have a final question to you. Uh, See, when I want to motivate my team through no, can you share an instant where saying no actually motivated your team or sparked a greater creativity? What lessons can others take from this?
Okay, so there have been various instances. Honestly, I also learned the hard way. You know, there's a lot of like, especially if we talk about mid-career professionals, and if we talk about professionals who are there in the industry, for many of us, the childhood would have been more like to groom us to be a yes person. We
Hmm.
were told to, we were made to learn how to say yes to things. We probably were not given a lot of choices that whether I would want to choose A or B. It was like the choice has been made on our behalf and we have to say yes to that. So I think lot of conditioning has come from our childhood, that this is how we have been groomed, right? So for me, I learned the hard way to say how to say no. But one thing which I realized is that we feel saying no is difficult. But if you look at in the retrospective, saying yes to something which you would not want to say yes to, it also means saying no to something which you actually would want, right?
I take a reference here.
Hmm.
So there is one pointer that I wanted to look was when you say it's a decision, whether telling is a decision or not telling also is a decision. So both are decisions, but the choice remains on how you want to take that decision. But if you really look at saying yes also is a decision, right? Saying no also is a decision.
Absolutely, right? Because in a way, if I'm saying yes to something I would not want to say yes to, it means there's something else which I'm saying no to because I mean, I would want to be a superhuman, but still, I would have my own limitations. I will expand, I will grow, but I will have my own limitations. So now when I started using this thought process, that this is important, that instead of shifting, I just made the shift that if saying no is difficult, let me shift
Hmm.
to saying yes,
Okay.
but not to A, but to B, right? So that simple shift, that I don't want to say no to A, or
Hmm.
that I don't want A, but I want B. So can I start with bringing up more of B? If I would
Okay.
want to do more of innovation, can I start focusing on that and start bringing that? And this is what I started sort of, bringing up in my team. This is what I started as a, as a leader, started sharing this and creating that culture, going back to that culture, that as you lead by example, you nurture that culture. You let people do that, what you would want to do. And this is something which has helped because in a way, you will create more space for something else to grow when you take off what you don't want to grow, right? So this is,
Yeah.
I think, pretty much what I feel about, how in a team or how in an organization we can nurture more of this.
I have one question from a leadership perspective. Okay, when it comes to future leaders,
Hmm.
what is the one piece of advice where we speak more looking at leaders here in our podcast? So how do we look at saying in for giving an advice for future CEOs or top leaders who always wants to get business out but cannot say no? And how about learning to say no in their careers? That can shape the leadership style itself. So how do you look at giving your inputs on that kind of a burnout that happens? And if you really look at leaders on top are always alone, so they need to say yes, but there are instances which they feel they have to say no. So what is your take on that?
Right. So one thing is, like any skill or like any habit, you need to start practicing it, right? And start small, right? Which could also be about small choices in your life, small choices at workplace where you
Hmm.
want to say no to,
Hmm.
right? And when you start building that mindset that this is something which I would want to say no to, but this is something which I would want to say yes to,
Okay.
right? That is something which will help. Now, one thing which comes to my mind is probably using the Pareto principle,
Hmm.
commonly known as the 80-20 rule, right? So, as per the principle, the 80% of the outcomes are driven by the 20% of the causes. Or, if I would want to simplify it, that what happens in my life, 80% of the outcome that I see happening is coming from only the 20% of the areas. So, as leaders, can we start focusing on those impactful areas?
Hmm.
Because what happens is when we are clear in our head, and of course, that will need evaluation, assessment, preparation, thinking through. But when we are clear about that, this is what the 20% of my focus area would be, which is driving my 80% of the outcomes, I would be able to be more efficient and a higher performer. And when I'm able to generate what I would want to, then automatically I will be considered as a person who would be looked up to, not as a person who is saying no. But can we just flip the story that if I'm finding it difficult to say no to something, let me come up with what I would want to say yes to,
Okay.
right? So I
Yeah.
think as leaders, if we can go full on, learn the skill, learn this art, and bring in, the skill of communication, because it's not just about making that decision to say no, but also how I can build my skills around it, how I can be more empathetic, how can I be more listening to what people would want, and I can still be more supportive. I think
Manisha,
that thing will.
yeah, great insights there. But uh, one thing that, see, it is very nice that we say no. I come back to the initial point that we say it is very difficult to say no. But is there a motivation that can be sparked to the teams and sparked to a greater creative by saying, what if I say no? Is there anything that you can look at as a motivation through no kind of statement that you would like to add to our viewers who can relate to it and say, this is how saying no can help us?
Right. So I think one simple thing is that when very simple thing, and this is something which I have used extensively in my life, is
Mm.
before I decide to say no, when I'm just, building that clarity that I have to say no, a question will come, why would I want to say no?
Hmm.
And that
Okay.
answering that question that, why would I want to say no? Because it does not align with my values. Why would I want to say no? Because this is not strategically what as a leader I'm planning for.
Hmm.
Why would I want to say no? Because from a business perspective, this is not what would help me grow. So now when I'm clear, doing that kind of analysis will help us at first step get that clarity, right?
Hmm.
That this is something which is for me and this is something which is not for me. And this clarity is going to now make you like a lens, which a magnifying lens, which will help you with lot of focus. Now while this may seem as like easier said than done,
Yeah.
and it,
Yeah.
it may look like that when actually things fall on your head you cannot say no and so on, but start small. Start to understand the pulse of the other person, start to understand their personality, style, what what will work for them, how can you bring up a no with them while you both move towards a common goal, right? So that human
Amazing.
centric approach, that skill has to be fine tuned.
Great, Manisha. We had a great session here today. I would like to summarize what we discussed with Manisha Gupta, helping us looking at. We started with the early career challenges, how high performance and strategic decisions can be taken, some leadership insights, the power of focus on what is the outcome and what exactly can happen. We spoke about human centricity and innovation kind, and we also spoke on navigating into uncertainties and some of the empathetic leadership that we can. Vijay picked up on some of the pitfalls and audience with engaging with practical advice stuff like, and then we spoke about CEO's insights and on how a no can be motivated or can be a motivational factor to get things done. So with this, I think Manisha had a great session with you today, and I think Vijay got dropped in the middle. So I would like to conclude the show with saying a thank you to you. And we are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope this discussion was valuable, and thank you for joining us today, Manisha.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank
Welcome, Manisha. We would bring up another topic very soon, and we will have Manisha come up and talk to us on another event. With this, we will conclude. Hoping to see you on a episode that is coming up on next Tuesday, that is 8th October at 6 p.m. IST. Please join us with a new speaker, a new topic that we will bring up. Thank you for being here, Manisha. Again, good day.
you.
Bye for now, Manisha.
Thank you.